On the night of September 12, 1997, the streets of downtown Los Angeles were quiet. But inside the Dunbar Armored Facility, something unprecedented was unfolding. 6 men, led by former safety inspector Alan Pace III, executed the largest cash robbery in American history. With meticulous planning and insider knowledge, Pace orchestrated the heist to perfection, walking out of the Dunbar Armor Depot with $18.9 million in cold, hard cash. The audacity of the crime left no immediate clues, stunning the city and shaking the foundations of security protocols. By the time the heist was over, the men had vanished, evading capture for nearly 2 years and leaving behind a trail of confusion that would take years to unravel. How did they do it? The Dunbar armored robbery remains one of the most meticulously planned and executed heists in history. The Dunbar Armored Facility on Mateo Street in Los Angeles was a fortress, storing millions in cash collected from banks and businesses across the city. Located in an industrial area of the city, the nondescript building gave no hint of the treasures it held within. Every day, armored trucks would come and go, ferrying cash to and from businesses across Southern California. It was a hub of financial movement, a critical node in the circulatory system of commerce. But beneath this veneer of security and routine, a plan was brewing. Alan Pace III, a former regional safety inspector for Dunbar and a man intimately familiar with the inner workings of Dunbar Armored, was about to exploit that knowledge in a way that would send shockwaves through the security industry and law enforcement alike. He worked there for over a year, using his insider knowledge to study every detail of the operation. Little did his employers know the man responsible for ensuring their security was planning to rob them. The robbery was more than a crime. It was a masterclass in preparation and precision. It's a tale that exposes the vulnerabilities that can exist even in the most secure systems, the power of insider information, and the cascading consequences of one audacious act. Alan Pace III was no ordinary criminal. In fact, prior to the heist, he had no criminal record at all. A former police officer turned safety inspector for Dunbar Armored, Pace was, by all accounts, a model employee. He was well liked by his colleagues and respected for his attention to detail. Little did anyone know that this same meticulousness would be the key to orchestrating one of the most successful heists in American history. Pace's role as a safety inspector gave him unprecedented access to the Dunbar facility. For months, he studied every aspect of the Dunbar facility's operations. He studied the layout, observed the routines of the guards and employees, understood the vulnerabilities in the security system, and most importantly, the times when the vault would be open and accessible. He knew the schedules of the guards, the locations of the security cameras. One of the key elements of Pace's plan was his understanding of the facility's camera system. He knew that there were blind spots, areas where the cameras couldn't see. By mapping these out, he could plot a route through the building that would keep him and his accomplices out of sight. Over time, he began to formulate a plan that would exploit such weaknesses. The motivation behind Pace's decision to turn to crime remains a subject of speculation. Some have suggested financial troubles, while others point to a desire for excitement or a feeling of being undervalued. Whatever the reason, Pace's transformation from trusted employee to master thief would have far-reaching consequences. Pace also knew that timing would be crucial. The vault was only open for a limited time each night as money was sorted and prepared for the next day's deliveries. He would need to strike during this window of opportunity. Pace knew that pulling off a heist of this magnitude required a team he could trust implicitly. He turned to his closest friends, people he had known for years, men who were loyal to him and who had various skills that would be essential for the operation. This crew included Eric Damon Boyd of Buena Park, Eugene Lamar Hill Jr. of Bellflower, Freddie Lynn McCrary Jr. of Arletta, Terry Wayne Brown Sr. of Los Angeles, and Thomas Lee Johnson of Las Vegas, Nevada. These were not hardened criminals. They were ordinary men, some of whom had never even been in trouble with the law. But with Pace's leadership, they became a well-oiled machine, capable of executing a near-flawless operation. Pace provided them with detailed floor plans, camera locations, ski masks, pistols, a shotgun, and radio headsets. Pace orchestrated multiple dry runs of the heist, practicing every move down to the second. His plan was to strike when the vault was at its most vulnerable, just after a Friday night money drop. By then, the armored trucks would have delivered vast sums of cash, but the money wouldn't yet have been distributed to banks or other businesses. This was the moment of opportunity. The day before the robbery, Pace was fired by Dunbar for tampering with company vehicles. On the evening of September 12, 1997, Pace and his team put their plan into action. To establish an alibi, the group of 6 assembled at a house party. But before leaving, Pace used his keys to gain admittance to the facility. Pace had timed the security cameras and determined how they could be avoided. It was Friday night, chosen deliberately as it was when the vault would be the fullest, loaded with cash for the weekend's transactions, and the vault was left open due to the large quantities of money being moved. Dressed in dark clothing and armed with weapons, Pace led his team into the facility. Using his employee access card, the crew entered the facility through an unsecured loading dock. The team moved swiftly through the building, following the route Pace had mapped out to avoid the cameras. Timing was everything. Once inside, they waited within the staff cafeteria, ambushing the guards one by one as they took their lunch breaks at approximately 12:30 a.m. When they reached the sorting room, they encountered several employees. The team quickly subdued them, using plastic ties to bind their hands and feet. No shots were fired. The operation was carried out with a chilling efficiency that spoke to Pace's detailed planning. With the employees secured, the team turned their attention to the vault. Here, Pace's inside knowledge proved invaluable. He knew exactly how to access the cash and which bags to target. The crew found stacks upon stacks of cash inside the vault, far more than they had anticipated. They worked methodically, loading duffel bags with bundles of cash. They focused on taking only the most valuable denominations, hundreds and 20s, to maximize the amount they could carry. In less than 30 minutes, the team had loaded approximately $18.9 million into their bags. They exited the building the same way they had entered, careful to avoid the cameras. Outside, they transferred the money to the waiting U-Haul and drove away, leaving no immediate clues as to their identities. The group then returned to the house party. Getting out of the building was only the first step. Pace had planned for every contingency, including how to handle the aftermath. They ditched their getaway vehicle and transferred the cash into other cars. The crew split up, each member responsible for transporting and hiding their share of the money. Pace knew that if they spent the cash too quickly or flaunted their newfound wealth, it would attract attention. He insisted that the crew lay low and avoid any ostentatious displays of money. The Los Angeles Police Department and the FBI were quickly brought in to investigate, but they found themselves facing a perplexing crime scene. There were no signs of forced entry. The security systems had not been triggered. And perhaps most baffling of all, there were no clear images of the perpetrators on the security cameras. It was as if the thieves had simply materialized inside the vault and then vanished. For months, the plan worked. The investigators quickly realized that this was no ordinary robbery. The level of planning and inside knowledge required to pull off such a heist pointed to the involvement of someone familiar with the facility's operations. Suspicion naturally fell on current and former employees. The police immediately realized that it was an inside job. and closely examined Pace due to his recent firing, but could find nothing. Investigators at the depot only found a plastic tailgate lens matching a U-Haul truck. The gang worked hard to conceal their new wealth, waiting 6 months before attempting to launder the $18.9 million. They enlisted the help of David Matsumoto, a Los Angeles immigration attorney, paying him and his office manager, Joaquin Bin, $1 million each for their assistance. Matsumoto structured the transaction via buying property and cars, investing in companies and writing checks, and W-2 tax forms for the robbers to give the impression they were earning wages. Pace also created his own front companies to launder more money and enlisted another man's help to buy property, so that they would not be listed under Pace's name. Boyd, through his father's company, laundered $177,000. Most or all of the robbers were laundering cash through real estate. As days turned into weeks and then months, the Dunbar Heist became one of the most intensive investigations in Los Angeles history. The FBI and LAPD formed a joint task force, dedicating significant resources to cracking the case. They interviewed hundreds of Dunbar employees, past and present. They pored over security footage, not just from the night of the heist, but from weeks before, looking for any suspicious activity. They traced vehicle registrations, checked airline manifests, and followed up on every tip that came in. But despite their efforts, the investigation seemed to stall. The thieves had left remarkably little evidence behind. No fingerprints were found, no DNA was recovered, and no witnesses could provide a clear description of the perpetrators. The lack of progress frustrated investigators, but fascinated the public. The audacity of the heist and the mystery surrounding it captured the imagination of people across the country. It became the subject of intense speculation and even admiration in some quarters. For nearly 2 years, it seemed that Pace and his team had pulled off the perfect crime. They had stuck to their agreement not to spend the money lavishly, which helped them avoid detection. But as time passed, some of the conspirators began to get restless. In the summer of 1999, everything changed due to a small, seemingly significant mistake. Eugene Lamar Hill made a crucial mistake. He accidentally gave a real estate broker a stack of banknotes that were still secured in their original currency straps. The broker obviously contacted the police. This unusual transaction caught the attention of the IRS, which reported it to the FBI. When agents traced the serial numbers on the bills, they found that they matched those stolen from the Dunbar facility. Suddenly, after months of dead ends, investigators had their first solid lead. Once Hill was in custody, the facade quickly crumbled. Facing the pressure of a federal investigation, Hill cooperated with authorities, and it wasn't long before they had enough evidence to arrest the rest of the crew. Alan Pace, the mastermind, was eventually captured. As the arrests were made, the full story of the heist began to emerge. Pace's meticulous planning, his exploitation of his insider knowledge, and the patience shown by the team in the aftermath all came to light. It was a tale that both impressed and appalled investigators. Most of the stolen money was recovered, but a significant amount, estimated at around $10 million, remained unaccounted for. This missing money would continue to tantalize investigators and the public for years to come. Pace and his accomplices were charged with conspiracy, bank robbery, and interfering with interstate commerce. In the trials that followed, prosecutors painted a picture of a brilliantly planned but ultimately flawed scheme. The defendants' own actions, particularly their eventual inability to resist spending the money, had led to their downfall. Alan Pace, initially claimed innocence, was arrested and sentenced to 24 years in prison on April 23, 2001. and was incarcerated at a federal correctional facility in Stafford until his release on October 1, 2020. Another collaborator, Boyd, was sentenced to 17 years due to his use of a gun and a prior criminal record. The 4 others, pleading guilty, received sentences between 8 and 10 years. Matsumoto was also implicated, resigning from the state bar. He and Ben were indicted on 71 counts related to money laundering and sentenced to 2.5 years. Less than a third of the money was ever recovered, with some $13.9 million still unaccounted for. The arrests shocked the community. Those who knew the men couldn't believe that they had been involved in such a high-profile crime. Alan Pace, who had once been a respected employee at Dunbar, was now facing a lengthy prison sentence. In September 2020, Charm City Kings producer Caleb Pinkett announced a film based on the robbery. The Dunbar robbery left a lasting impact on Los Angeles and the security industry as a whole. The sheer scale of the heist and the audacity of those who committed it forced companies to rethink their security protocols. It led to a comprehensive review of security protocols not just at Dunbar Armored, but across the entire armored car industry. New measures were implemented to prevent insider threats, and employee screening processes were intensified. For the families of the robbers, the fallout was devastating. Many of them had been unaware of their loved ones' criminal activities until the arrests were made public. The story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of greed and the lengths to which people will go when they believe they can outsmart the system. The case also had a lasting impact on law enforcement techniques. The patience shown by the thieves in not immediately spending their ill-gotten gains led to changes in how financial crimes were investigated. Authorities began to look at longer-term patterns of behavior and financial transactions. The Dunbar Depot heist of 1997 remains one of the most fascinating crimes in American history. Alan Pace III and his crew had everything they needed to pull off the crime of a lifetime. Inside knowledge, careful planning, and the nerve to see it through. The nearly 2 years that passed before the first arrests were made showed the importance of patience in both committing and solving crimes. But in the end, it was human error that brought them down. Their story serves as a reminder that even the most foolproof plans can unravel with a single misstep. Years later, the mystery of what happened to the missing millions still lingers. While most of the crew paid the price for their actions, the bulk of the stolen cash was never recovered. Somewhere, hidden away, are the remains of one of the most audacious heists in American history. A heist that nearly succeeded, but ultimately fell apart due to one man's lapse in judgment. The Dunbar robbery remains a fascinating chapter in the annals of crime. A story of ambition, greed, and the fine line between success and failure. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to Breakout Bank for more videos.